Hey guys, this is Rick coming at you with Weed to No Basis, the podcast for all things cannabis business related. Are you an entrepreneur? Have something you wanted to create, something you wanted to bring to life in the cannabis industry? Maybe you've always wanted to partake in one of the biggest industries in modern day history. This is the podcast to listen to.
We're coming at you live again, guys, and I'm in San Antonio, and I'm here with just a superstar. Like, this is so cool. And I say that because we had a little brief conversation prior to, and I'm going to give a quick intro to Whitney Beatty. And I'm going to look at my notes because she's done so many cool things in the cannabis space and her startup journey. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what she does, and she's going to take the mic. So, and here's literally what she said, and I love it. Inspired by a lack of stylish, safe cannabis storage systems and a disdain for storing medicine in a shoebox, Apothecarry brand CEO Whitney Beatty is a successful entertainment industry executive, and I want to hear more about that, turned cannabis storage designer. And you mentioned something else on the one, kind of when we talked, and something you printed, that we put cigars in a humidor, wine in a wine fridge, liquor in a liquor bar. So why do people put their bud, their weed, in a shoebox under the bed? And on that note, Whitney, it's so awesome to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Nice. So you recognized the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's true. I like in my own life, I realized I had, this wine fridge. I had cigars that I love that were in a humidor. And I had my high quality, expensive cannabis that I used as medicine in a shoebox. And that made absolutely no sense to me. Who invites people over and says, hey, come smoke with me out of my shoebox? There's something compromised and wrong about offering people cannabis out of a baggie. I'm like, this is just does not fit with my lifestyle. It doesn't make sense. And how come we can't, upgrade this experience?
I love it.
So I started a company that did so.
I love it. So now, I want to talk a little bit more about kind of your startup journey and what you're doing. But one thing you mentioned was entertainment industry executive. So I'm curious, what did that mean, or what did you do? Because you're in SoCal, right? Southern Cal.
Yeah. I'm in Los Angeles, and I have been for almost 20 years now. So I came out here originally to get my master's degree in film production, which I did at Loyola Marymount University, and I worked in the entertainment industry for 15 years as a reality TV development executive. My last gig was as a senior vice president over at Warner Brothers Telepictures, running one of their subsidiary brands. And I developed TV shows, which meant my job is to, in the reality space, it's to dig into new worlds, figure out what's interesting, figure out the people that are interesting, and be able to figure out the best way to tell those stories. And so I've always loved going into, subculture and understanding subcultures, understanding people and lifestyle and the way that they make their choices. And it was actually part of what made me interested in the cannabis space, because then I started digging in, because what I was seeing in the media did not match the people that I knew who use cannabis. Because if you look, even now, where we've got legalization of some form or fashion in over half of the states, who are the cannabis consumers on television? You've got potheads, stoners who are, unproductive in life. You've got bad kids behind a school gym who are ruining their lives. But the people I knew who are using cannabis here are doctors and lawyers and your real estate agent and, your accountant and the pastor at your church. So I'm like, why do we not see the real culture of cannabis consumers, out there? And how come there is seem to be one level of product at that point in time as well? Everything was kind of pointed towards that mainstream 22-year-old kid, if you will. There was no higher end cannabis that was really happening at that point in time. As a matter of fact, when I first started talking to investors, that's what they told me. They're like, you are creating a product for a market that doesn't exist and will never exist. And I was like, I exist. I'm not a unicorn. And I know that there's a lot of other people like me. And for, from then on, it was game on. Let's go. Let's prove them wrong.
Nice. So you were told you're creating something that there's no need for. Basically, there's could be a waste of time. What was it about either what you heard or whatever that said, oh, hell no, I'm doing this?
For me, it's two things. First, I'm ornery. So you tell me I can't do anything, and it's definitely going to make me do it. But more importantly, it's data. I had data. I went and I talked to so many people. I sat down with people that I knew, people that I didn't know, people that I knew consumed, and asked them what they needed. You know, in my life, I'm a mother. So I knew that I wanted to keep my cannabis in my home locked up because little kids have very busy hands. And I was tired of having to hide things from myself. And I knew that when I did hide things from myself, when I found it, you know, 3 months later, because inevitably I forgot where I put it because mom brain, you know, it was dried out. I wasn't keeping it in humidity. I didn't even know that cannabis needed humidity at that point in time. So, you know, I had to educate myself to get, you know, to do that, to know that. And then, you know, I would lose all my tools. I'd had a PAX on this corner and a grinder over there. And I swore I had a tray and it was around here somewhere. And maybe there's some papers. And so mixing all these things together, I was like, there is a need. And is other people having these same problems? Yes. So what can I do to, you know, to alleviate that? And then also with the rise of a more expensive consumer, if you will, with a higher household income, there's also, you know, cannabis is a social consumption drug in a lot of ways. People share cannabis, people go out and smoke a joint together. And in that sharing, you know, people do want to be able to have something nice so they can present things in the same way as they have a nice humidor, or they have a nice wine fridge, or they have a beautiful bar. And so after talking to people and realizing that they did feel the same way that I did, I thought that people were being short-sighted. They didn't see the larger picture. And if you look at the differences in the industry that, you know, I entered in 2015 to the one now, it's night and day. I mean, like, everyone is trying to come up with a higher end cannabis brand. If you look at edibles, if you look at packaging, if you look at, you know, even the rise of the microdose, I think all of those speak to, you know, elevation of the, you know, of the space and this new consumer that's coming in.
Interesting. So you said a lot there, and there was a lot of really good stuff, but something that stood out to me among a lot of things, you dropped a whole lot of really cool bombs there, a lot of cool nuggets, was, and you led with this, was you're ornery, which means when you were told it can't be done, you said, "Oh, watch me." Those are my words, right?
It's the truth.
And one could inarguably say that is a hallmark of an entrepreneur who was destined for success, but that's not enough. Because then you said you also had data. So let me ask you something. Is orneriness enough without the data? Would you have, if you didn't have data, would you have said, well, maybe I need to rethink this?
The data is important because and I talk to other entrepreneur friends about this a lot, because a very important part of being an entrepreneur is being able to pivot and knowing when to pivot. Because if you just keep on driving at the wall because you think that you're always right, you know, you end up off course. We're in an industry that is constantly changing and constantly evolving, and you have to be able to pivot and you have to be able to move with the industry. And that becomes important. But you do have to keep your own vision. And for me, the way that I support the vision and the things that I see is through information, because data is facts. And I can go and say, hey, I talked to 350 people. This is what they said. These are the numbers. This is the sample. I need to have something that I can use to support, you know, my positioning. I don't want to be that entrepreneur that refuses to change just because I'm bullheaded. And so the best way for me to avoid that is to have a little bit of information to back up, you know, what I believe to be true.
Interesting. You also mentioned you're a mom.
Yes, I am.
Yes.
I've got a 5-year-old. I tell people all the time, especially investors, if you want someone who's going to take care of your money and make sure that it's not wasted, ask a single mother to do so, because I don't play games. So if anything, I think that it helps me in being an entrepreneur. I am very careful with my time. I make sure that I budget it wisely. I'm on top of 50 different things at once. And I think that, you know, being a parent, definitely it's given me a drive that I never knew existed. You know, I tell people all the time that one of the reasons I left the entertainment industry at the time that I did was that what I knew for sure is that I'd made millions of dollars for companies that I worked for, that I was not confused about. And the question is, when was I going to make millions of dollars for me? When was I going to be able to put the skill set that I had in place, the knowledge that I had into something that I thought that could build something, you know, generational wealth and opportunity? in my own life and give me the opportunity to do something that I loved. And that's kind of why I quit. That's why I, one of the reasons I took this leap into this space was for that. And I think that being a mom gave me the bravery that I needed to step away from that desk and step away from a 6-figure income. That's, it's scary, especially when I also sold my house. After I'd done my MVP testing and I knew that this was something real. And if I wanted other people to invest in me, the first thing I need to do is invest in myself. So I sold my house and used that money to start Apothecarry.
I love it. Much respect. I mean, and I say that with like total respect. I'm going to guess. I see some photos behind you that might be your child, and
that's him.
what more of a motivator can there possibly be than knowing you have a life that is dependent, a little life that is dependent on you succeeding? And I can also, I didn't grow, I grew up with my parents were both hustlers. They did a lot, but they were also inspirations for me because they both worked their butts off, and seeing them, I believe, really, it's made me a large part of who I am today. And so much respect for that's incredible.
Thank you.
So I've seen your products. They look high end. They look really nice. And that's something you mentioned, is that you mentioned that, there's this kind of dichotomy of in the cannabis or weed world, we see unproductive kids, stoners, potheads, but then you also mentioned physicians, pastors, executives. And so it sounds like, and by the look and feel of the products I've seen, you're catering to that high end market, right?
I am. I'm definitely am. My demographic is women, medical users, and urban professionals aged 27 to 65 who are making over $100,000 a year. That's my demographic. If we're talking about my, standard customer, I've got a 33-year-old male who is a professional white collar worker who is making somewhere, north of 6 figures. Those are the people who are, whose our brand, is made for.
Nice. Very good. So did you know that from the get-go? Like, did you know who, if we use the word avatar, who your ideal client avatar was? Did you know that from the get-go, or did you work your way into that ideal client kind of scenario?
To a certain extent, I think I knew from the get-go that, I was targeting, I knew I was building a luxury product. I knew I wanted something that was more upscale. And so that I was clear on. I wasn't sure about what our male to female split was because everyone told me that there are no women in cannabis. That was also back in the day where they didn't think that women were going to buy their own cannabis and weren't going to consume, weren't going to be integral to the market. They're like, if you get 15% women, you'll be lucky. And I was like, I don't know, because I know a lot of girls who are using cannabis on a daily basis. And so some of those things, shifted around. Right now, we're about 60-40 male, female. So shows how much they knew. So we continue, again, data becomes very important. And so we continue to poll our customer base on a yearly basis to see, who are they? How are they using the plant? How are they using their case? What do they like? What don't they like? What do they want to see next? I use that information not just for, making iterations on the product itself, but, deciding what product we should launch next. What should we be getting into? Where's the market moving?
Nice. So it wasn't just let's design something, launch it, and let's see what happens. You're continuously updating your data. You mentioned polling, so you're polling your customers. You are always, it sounds like, in redevelopment or
constant.
Interesting.
Constant. I cannot stay still. This industry moves too fast. 3 years ago, people were like, CBD, what are the CBDs? And now it's like they're all over the internet. You can't escape it if you wanted to. It's the industry moves too fast for me to sit on my, laurels and hope that, everything stays the same. I've got to get out in front of it.
Yeah. And CBD flower is becoming even more popular. I'm in Texas, and marijuana is obviously illegal here. There is the governor just did just we're about to enact some medical marijuana laws,
Really?
which are very, very early stage, but it's a positive step in Texas. And
Yeah.
because of that, though, because it's, marijuana is illegal here, there's a boom of hemp flower, and people it looks, feels, smells just like, regular marijuana. And I'm curious then, do you, or do you know if all of your clients are straight up cannabis marijuana consumers, or are you finding any of them to be hemp consumers as well?
That's a good question. We haven't separated hemp out. We have talked about CBD a lot because obviously I'm in Los Angeles, we're a legal state. And so we have a lot of CBD heavy flower. Matter of fact, I use CBD heavy flower. That's not necessarily hemp. Well, it's got THC in it, but lower dose amounts. And the storage remains the same. But as the market moves closer to hemp is legal. So as people start to consume that on a more regular basis, we'll definitely make sure that we're being cognizant of how that affects our base. We are already the rise of pre-rolls. I get lazy sometimes and I like pre-rolls or whatever, but I need to make sure that I'm storing them correctly. So we're working on, storage solutions for that because, 50% of our customer base said that they buy pre-rolls on occasion. So being able to, adjust where we are, or, being able to make slight changes even to the product because of the way that people are consuming allows us to stay on top of changes on the market.
Interesting. Very cool. So you've like shared so much. My mind is going in 17 different directions just from all of the things. Some of the things we shared before we got on is that I love, it's what we do. We work with cannabis startups, whether they're CBD, hemp, marijuana, ancillary, plant touching or not. And so I'm always amazed by what I learn and by what I hear. And we were actually introduced by some mutual friends out in SoCal, and we were talking about how it's a big but small community.
It is. I'm like, this is it is very large industry, and yet we all know each other. It's all 1 degree of separation. I'm lucky to be friends with some awesome people in this space. And they've been really good about, giving me good recommendations and introducing me to the best people who are out there.
Very cool.
Because, not everyone obviously is a good actor, but there are a lot who are.
Yeah, there's a phrase that comes to mind, and I didn't coin it, but it's your network is your net worth, and I think there's a lot of truth to that.
It's the truth. It's absolutely the truth. I tell people all the time, especially when they're trying to come into this space and they're new, that it's so important that you build a community around yourself. I can't tell you how many hours I've been able to save because I can pick up the phone and call a friend and say, hey, how are you dealing with this problem? How are you dealing with this payment process? Or how are you dealing with, this regulation or what have you? Being able to have a network in this space that is so overly regulated and you have to deal with so much red tape. It becomes, the difference between someone who gives up because they're frustrated and someone who makes it through.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of it boils down to when you have that deep set why, and your why is right there on the pictures behind you that keeps you going when the going gets really, really tough.
Absolutely. He's insistent upon eating 3 meals a day. I try to get him off of that plan, but no, he's like 3 meals, which means I need to keep working.
he's probably going to want new clothes and
seriously,
and all the usual stuff. And dang it, those kids. You got to feed those habits, like clothes
constantly.
And food.
Golly. Stop growing.
Yeah, that whole clothes and food and shelter is, oh my gosh, yeah, jeez.
So needy they are.
So Whitney, I'm going to ask you to take us back a little bit because so you had this idea. You were initially told that it wasn't viable. You had data to back up your decision and your orneriness. And then you took a very unique path in that you became a member of one of the first, I'm going to let you explain this, but the first cohort of Canopy, I think Canopy San Diego, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us what that means, like, especially to the startup entrepreneurs who maybe are in this inflection point where they're looking for assets or resources, maybe funding. So how did that work? How did that go for you?
So to back up a little bit, so the way that I started initially was that I was going to do a IndieGoGo campaign. I was intending to sell, and then I'd use that money in order to get the cases made. And that was going to be my way of fundraising. And I did a friends and family round of funding, was able to raise $30,000, spent that $30,000 on advertising and videos and everything to support this campaign. And 2 weeks into the campaign, I got an email that said that IndieGoGo was shutting me down for being paraphernalia. And I was devastated. I'm like, what in the hell? I've spent all this money. And there is no money that is heavier on an entrepreneur's heart than the money that came from friends and family. Because that was money that, you know, it was in my network. I did not have people who could write $100,000 check. So this is, you know, $5,000 checks and $2,000 checks for people who love me and care about me and believe in what I was trying to do. And so I was like, oh shit. And I wanted to hide underneath, a bed for a couple of days. But what I ended up doing was saying, you know what, I can't give up now. I don't have a lot of money left. I'm going to take every penny I have left, even, you know, money that is slated for bills. And I'm going to buy 100 of these cases. I'm going to put them online on my website that had no traffic to it and also had no Google AdWord buy behind it. And I'm going to see if they sell. And at least if I do this, I will be able to say that I did all that I could. And I tried to get it off the ground, and I won't look back 10 years from now and be like, I could have, should have, would have. And so I did that, and they sold out in 6 weeks with no advertising at my price point, which people said was impossible. And I was like, got it. Okay, now I've got an MVP. I've got something that I can work with, that I can work from. And I started talking to investors. And I don't know if you're familiar with the ArcView Group. They're an investment network. And they have this program where you can come on and you can pitch to their investors online. So I go and I pitch to their investors, and I worked on this pitch and blah, blah, blah. And I realized that at the end, they judge you on a 1 to 5 scale. And I think my judgment was like somewhere around the 2 range. And I'm like, what the hell? I've worked so hard, and I realized that what was going on is they didn't understand my opportunity. They didn't understand the case. I got notes like, well, you should just partner with a safe company, and then you put the cannabis in the safe and you just put the jars in the safe. I'm like, you guys don't understand the aesthetic. You guys don't understand the space. And I had to realize that that's my fault. It's my fault that they weren't understanding it. And it was also my fault because I had not done pitching before to investors. So, I mean, the first guy who, was like, okay, I'll listen to you, send me over your executive summary. I sent him a bio with my headshot on it. I had no idea what the executive summary was. And I was like, sure, that's great. I'm like, I'm still embarrassed to this day like, that I sent that. And I knew that I needed help. I need to understand the market better. I need to understand how to talk to investors. I need to understand what they were looking for. And in my research for that, I found Canopy. Canopy is a business accelerator that is focused on ancillary cannabis businesses. They had done well out in Boulder, and they had one up in Berkeley at the time. And I heard that they were coming to San Diego, and I applied. And luckily I got accepted into the program. And it's a 16-week all-intensive program where they're going to cram as much information into you as physically possible. So literally from Monday morning when we got there from Monday meetings or whatever, and all the companies would have to stand up and say what you did this week, what you didn't do last week, where are your problems coming from, what do you plan on getting done this week, how can we help you? You kind of have to take accountability. And then we would have people coming in to talk trademark and IPO and marketing and payment processing and all the things that a business needs. And then we had mentors that came in to talk to us about what our sales channels are, and 3-hour sessions a week where we were just doing pitching, how to pitch, how to change your pitch around, working on those decks. And it was hard. It was hard for me being a single mother because, that it was down in San Diego, which meant that I had to wake up on Monday mornings, drive to San Diego. I stayed in the Airbnb Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday nights. I got up on Thursday and worked all day, then had to drive back up to LA to pick up my kid from daycare. And I had my kid for the rest of the week. So I was literally on this, I am working constantly schedule. But I can clearly say that I would not be where I am right now if I hadn't done that. I was able to expand my knowledge tenfold I was able to come out of there and then go to that same ArcView group and do that same online pitch and end up in the high fours and be invited to go pitch on stage at Los Angeles forum, and then to go there and win the pitch prize and win a $60,000 investment that allowed me to kick off my seed raise and go on to raise $250,000.
Nice. So you basically didn't quit. You weren't kidding when you said ornery.
I'm not playing games. I'm like, I'm the little engine that refuses to quit. I tell people all the time, I never said I'm the smartest. I never said I'm the smartest, but I'm the one that refuses to quit. And that does make a difference. My job is not to know all the things as a CEO. My job is to get people on my team who do, to be able to fill in the areas that are not my largest skill set, to be able to know and speak intelligently about all areas of my business, and be the one that's driving the action. And that I can do.
Nice. I love it. I am right now just fired up. Like, I am so fired up right now. Like that energy.
Thank you.
It's infectious. Okay, so Canopy, 16-week resident program, meaning you had to go down there, physically down there. And those are, for the folks who are listening or you're watching this, accelerator and incubator programs, a lot of them are vastly different. Some of them take an equity stake. Some of them are resident programs where you have to physically be there. Others are digital, some don't. They're there's a large variety of incubators or accelerator programs out there. And then to give some clarity to the audience, ArcView is it's a venture capital group that was started probably maybe several years ago by, I think, Steve D'Angelo and I think one of the other folks there is Janine. But either way.
Yes, Janine Sullivan is a member of the group. It's ran by Troy Drayton over at ArcView, and he came from Normal, I believe. But it's an investment group of, I think that at this point in time, they've invested more over the 120 to 130 million in the cannabis space. Yeah.
So you went through Canopy and you were given the fire hose of information, just a fire hose of,
it is.
You said 15 or 16 weeks. How long was it?
16 weeks.
16 weeks. 16 weeks of you having to drive about an hour. So LA to San Diego, just
2.5 hours each way. Yep.
2.5 hours. And then you would stay there from Monday to Thursday. And again, I'm recapping this just so our audience gets the legitimate, like, this is what sometimes startup life entails. And you had a child.
I had a child. I was able to do, luckily I have a co-parent who was very, supportive of the fact that it was important for me to do this and would show up at my house on Mondays at 6 a.m. so I could get out of there and keep them Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday so I could do this. And I'm like, I'll be back. I promise. But when I was gone, I had to maximize the time that I'm away from my child. At that point in time, my kid was 2.5, 3. And it was super, 2.5, because we were also doing potty training at that time. But it was super important to me that if I'm going to be gone, that I'm going to use this time wisely. So I'm going to get into the office, at 8, and I'm going to be there till 10 p.m. I'm like, I tell people all the time, I don't even know what restaurants are in San Diego, because by the time I got out of work every day, they were all closed. I'm like, I was eating, I knew everybody at the 7-Eleven, because that's where I was eating at. San Diego closes early, but it was, the amount of information, the amount of contacts that I got, from someone who was being outside, it's like a MBA in cannabis, that's dropped on your head in 16 weeks. It's information that every entrepreneur needs. And they call it accelerator because it pushes your business forward, and it does, because the amount of time it would have taken me to get all that information and that insight by myself would have been years. It would have been years.
Gotcha. And Canopy, do they take a stake? Do they take an equity position in your company? Okay.
They take an equity position in your company, and they give you funding for your company.
Gotcha. And then ArcView was something totally different, but same thing. They probably took another equity position, and then you got additional funding.
Yeah, they actually came in as part of my round. So they're members of my seed round. So they have a equity position in that. Yeah.
Nice. And then just to give some clarity to other folks, so you mentioned IndieGoGo, and for those who don't know, IndieGoGo it's a crowdfunding platform. There's a lot of them out there, and So what you just said should be noticed by other cannabis, especially ancillary, because you don't have a plant touching product. You had basically a box.
A box made
box.
of wood and some fabric. And that was my story. And that was my argument. You know, and hopefully things have changed. I'm not sure. I know that there are a lot of new platforms out there that are a lot more canna friendly right now. But that hurt. And again, you know, even though I have a box, I still face all the issues that any business within the space. You know, I still can't get a bank loan. I can't get a small business loan. I can't, you know, we had problems with banking. It took a long time for us to find a payment processor. We're considered high risk. I'm like, is the box going to raise up in the middle of the night and eat people? I'm so confused. Why am I high risk? I'm like, no one is consuming the box. But still, I'm like, you have these issues because you're in the space.
So Whitney, if you went to your website like tonight and replace every word that said cannabis, hemp, CBD, whatever, and just put licorice, you would be totally fine.
I would be totally, I'm telling you, and I tell them all the time, I'm not in charge of what you put in that box. It could be cereal and dreams. Do not care. Like, put what makes you happy in there. But as long as I continue to target this market, I end up in the same, you know, basket with this market, which means all the higher fees and all the stress and strain that comes from operating a cannabis adjacent business.
So I mentioned licorice because I have like bags of red vines down here, but you said cereal and dream. Was that it? That just came out of nowhere.
I'm not here to judge.
Oh, geez. Your box, the cereal and dream box, if you called it that, fine. Because it's a stash box.
Exactly.
You can't get a count. You got shut down by a crowdfunding platform, and people probably look at you with a crooked eye at sometimes, like, who the heck is she? Absolutely.
I'm like, it'd be a little bit easier if I told them to put that in there.
That's crazy. Something you also mentioned, and again, I'm sharing this just to kind of just to give some clarity for some of our listeners, is you mentioned the F&F round, friends and family, and those are the rounds that you mentioned that, you know, your friends and literally friends and family. This is like your neighbors, your mom.
My auntie, my cousins, my people who I know and love and trust, who go into their 401ks or their savings and write me a check.
Yeah. And those rounds are, they're the most gracious because it comes from people who love you and believe in you, but it carries a heavy burden at times, I would imagine.
Heck yeah. I'm like, do you want an awkward Thanksgiving? Wreck a company and see what your auntie says. Like, so you do. I'm like, those are people who gave not because, you know, obviously I tell them about the opportunity and why it's important and all of those things. But they gave because they love you and they believe in you, and that's personal. And that's heavier, you know, than some of my larger investments who are seasoned investors. These people, you know, a lot of the people that came into my round, matter of fact, every person that's in my friends and family round is a minority. Only one had ever invested in anything ever before. So I, you know, walk them through exactly what this is, what does it mean, and all those things. And the fact that they were willing to take money that they did not have and give it to my business, to this day sits heavy on me. I appreciate them because I would not be where I am right now without them. And that's why I think it's important that we talk in communities across the board, but also very important in communities of color about investing. What does that mean? And about why it's important that we're investing in the cannabis space. Communities of color have been disproportionately disenfranchised by a war on drugs. And now that there is a legal market out there, we are not participating in this opportunity. And we're talking about something that has the ability to be a $40-50 billion industry. This is an opportunity to build generational wealth. This is an opportunity, you know, if this was the end of prohibition and someone said, hey, do you want to start Jack Daniels? Do you want to, you know, start your Grey Goose? You say yes. And so I see those opportunities here right now. And who knows when there will be another industry that pops up, you know, from nothing. It's kind of like the tech boom. I don't want to sit around, you know, 20 years ago from now and say, you know, I didn't do what was possible. I sat and watched it go by. I refuse to do that.
Yeah. Love it. So you started the company what year?
2015.
2015, and we are now in 2019.
Mhm.
How's business been?
Business is good. We've been growing exponentially, which has been fantastic. We're out there raising again, raising $1 million round right now, which is, exciting and exhausting all at once. We started off with a single SKU. We now have 12 SKUs. We were able to streamline our manufacturing, streamline our fulfillment, launch on new channels. It's been a wild and amazing ride. Being a part of this business, I went from doing it all by myself to bringing in people to work with me, and now we have 7 people on our team. It's been the best adventure that I never saw coming. If you would have told me 10 years ago that I was going to be working in the cannabis space and that I'd be a CEO of a cannabis facing company, I would have told you that you smoked something that was a hell of a lot stronger than cannabis. So it's been a wild ride.
What are the over the next 12 months, or maybe even through 2020, what are your big goals for your company, for the Apothecarry?
Good question. We are going to continue to expand our product line. I want to do more limited edition cases. I want to partner with artists and celebrities who are authentic to the space to build products that are authentic to them. I want to expand our brand and our brand name. That becomes really important for us. So we're going to start doing a lot more advertising. That's going to be huge. We're working on expanding our wholesale reach, working with dispensaries to do, cannabis of the month clubs where, they would give people apothecary cases that were engraved with their dispensary, and the customer could bring back their jars to refill their case on a monthly basis. So working on things like that for the company, and also doing more international business. I have been shocked as I'm, focused on the U.S. market, how many people, from around the world are consuming cannabis, and they want our products. So I need to do a better job of being able to get them to them.
Nice. Love it. What would you like to tell the listeners, whether they're startup mode, whether they're a disenfranchised minority, a female, or a guy in Texas doing an interview? What would you like to leave as a parting comment, quote, just something where you get to drop a wisdom nugget right now?
Oh, that's a good question. I guess for everybody, I'd say be ornery. Be ornery. Don't take no for an answer. Don't lay down easy. If you see something and you've got a vision for it, do the work, do the research. I believe that research is so important in this space. Find the end of the internet, read every article, absorb as much as you can, because that makes your business better and puts you in a stronger position. But the reason why, so many people aren't successful, a lot of it is because they don't keep pushing. It's so easy to give up. And it's hard to continue to wake up every day and try to figure it out, but wake up every day and figure it out anyway. For women, my favorite quote, it remains, women who seek to be equal to men lack ambition. My job isn't to come into this space and try to be equal to men. My job is to be the best I can be in this space. So do the work. I think that there's been powerful changes in this industry from female participation. But I'm a little bit nervous about it. We used to talk 2-3 years ago about how exciting it was that this space had more female CEOs than anywhere else, because we had 38%, and that number, then took a nosedive to 27%. Make sure that you're showing up in this space, females. There is so much opportunity. The rise of the microdose, came, I think a lot of that came from female influence. I would love to see what this industry turns out to be in 5-10 years, with a equal divide within that CEO suite. Those jobs make a difference, and being able to sit at the table and bring in our input is invaluable. So don't let anybody scare you off from being in this space. Women are welcome. Come through.
Love it. I love it. That quote you dropped was magic. It was power. Women who seek to be the equal of men don't have enough ambition. That's
absolutely.
wow. I'm gonna have to text that to my daughters here in a little bit. So
hey,
yeah.
so I tell my niece all the time, we're not trying to be equal. I'm like, take off.
Yeah.
Do the best you can do.
You want to be equal to a man? What are you, slacker?
Oh,
love it. Where can the listeners find you? Like on the web, Instagram? Where can they find you if they want to reach out or see what you're doing?
You can always find us online. We're at www.theapothecarycase.com. That's APOTHECARRY.
I see the
Case.com.
the pillow behind you, so you can see the spelling. I see it on the pillow.
See?
There it is. That's it.
See,
yes.
Apothecary.
Yep.
So you'll find us there online. You'll also find us on Instagram as The Apothecary. You'll find me personally as The Hi Mommy Life on Instagram. You'll also find us on Facebook. Watch our videos on YouTube, where we're also The Apothecary Case. And I love to connect with people.
Nice. I wrote all those down. We are going to put all those for those of you who are, if you're driving and listening, don't pull over and write this down. Don't try to do this. We're gonna put these on the show notes, the links and places to find Whitney and this show specifically, and of course this message. And you guys, you got to check out her site. You got to check out the products are beautiful. They truly are, and they're
Thank you.
Looking around my office, and I realized that I have some things here that are in the shoebox. So I
upgrade time.
It's time to upgrade.
Absolutely.
Whitney, I really appreciate you being on here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been real fun.
Yeah. Anyway, so guys, remember, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, it's because you two are on a Weed to Know basis. Thank you, Whitney, so much, and we're going to be in touch here real soon.